I just got in rock guards from both ZL1 and ones from Swaim for the Challenger Widebody. Didn't know which design I would like better, so I was showing them both. I think I'm going to go with the Swaim, which are these are the front here, the larger ones. In the end, I tried to line them up on top of each other as best I could, but there's not a lot more coverage with the Swaim as far as what protrudes to the outside, but the mounting method I think is a little better. The Swaim uses screws, and it actually has standoffs to help keep it off the fender flare. ZL1 relies on these slide clips that have, it's hard to see in the plastic bag, but it's got basically little teeth that are on the inside to grab the plastic, and then there's a single screw. Let's see if I can find it in here. But there's a single screw in here that you screw into the bottom trim piece on the corner, and all these little areas are for the clips. I think I prefer the method of having, this is a pop clip, factory pop clip on the front, this is a factory bolt, and then you do drill one hole in the inner liner for the top screw. So it is shy a couple attach points because you have 4 clips here and then 1 screw, but I think they're going to in the end be more effective than just trying to rely on these clips, which over time could start flexing and then open up. For the rear, you do have to, I don't have the ZL1s out, but they attach the same way, but for the rear you do have to drill 4 holes on the Swaims to mount those. But again, they come with standoffs through the rear and actual screws versus clips. This is all the front and rear hardware in one bag for the ZL1. So I think either method in the end is probably fine. Swaims are just slightly larger. I think for the front, you're going to get a little bit more corner coverage because these are going to sit off at a slight angle. I think you're just going to get a little bit more corner coverage there. Trying to center these 2 screws that attach to the same trim panel, but there's a lot more positive reviews on these. There's not really any negative reviews on the ZL1. Just some folks have complained about the clips, and in general, the teeth on the clips kind of make me feel they're going to do as much damage to the inner fender as, I mean, it won't be on the visible side, but you see right there, there's the 2 little teeth on either side. It's really not a lot of contact point, but they're going to dig into the inner fender, chew away some of the material. They may move over time. This whole thing may want to shift, so you're really relying a lot on that 1 screw to keep it positioned and not have it move around. Plus, this edge will be right up against your fender flare, and it's relying on the pressure to push this against the flare. These actually have standoffs that kick it off from the flare a little bit, so it's not constantly against it. You still may get some rub. I already have Expel in the car, and it's wrapped around the flare, so hopefully that'll protect that area. So we're going to go ahead and fit these up, see how it goes. Not too excited about putting essentially mud flaps on my Widebody, but even with the Expel, I've seen reviews and reports of it getting larger rocks getting through the Expel and causing damage. So it's better than having a bunch of paint chips you try to fill in later. We're starting to install the front rock guards from the Swaim kit. You can see you pop out a little pop clip there. There's a 7mm nut. It's the uppermost nut. You get your washer on there. What I've done, wasn't too fond of the screws they use, so I went ahead. It's gonna be hard to focus. I'll put a riv nut in there. See if I can get that out of the way better. Yeah, we've got a riv nut in there. So that's an 832 riv nut. Use my riv nut gun, so then I can go ahead and use a regular machine threaded screw instead of trying to thread that thing into the plastic. Just didn't fill me with a lot of confidence. We'll see how this goes. So on the 7mm factory bolt, we have the 1/4 inch spacer, and up here we're going to put the 1/2 inch spacer, give some standoff from the fender. We're installing the rear rock guard on our Widebody Hellcat. Again, we're gonna go and use these rib nuts instead of trying to use the plastic screws. They would screw up into these panels. These aren't terribly thick. Probably only get a couple insertions and it'd start wearing out. But the two lower screws mount in this panel. I may eventually try to find a smaller rib nut that'll fit in there, but this is a lot thicker. So we'll be leaving the screws for the kit in there. And we'll be using rib nuts for the upper two screws. Hopefully that'll give us a little more stability. So what we do with this one, and you probably want to look at the instructions, but you line this end up and then work on fitting it. That we're going to set the bottom screw first. Okay, so once you have this screw set, you want to line this up so this upper edge is where you want it. Mark this guy, drill the second screw in, should be centered in that trim, and then you're going to go ahead and flatten this guy out, or form him around the curve, and use these holes as your guide. I used an 1/8 inch bit for the pilot, that I'm going to then open it up with a 1/4 inch for my rib nut. Okay, you can see we've got our two holes here on this trim panel, and then we've got our two pilots up here that we're going to use for our rib nuts. Now, if you're using the regular kit, you just use the self-tapping or coarse thread screws, but I think the rib nuts are going to work better here. Our rib nut tool set, this is the number 832. And all we're going to do is pop it in the hole, tighten her down, and do it in 2 locations, and then we have nice threaded inserts instead of screwing into plastic. So we got one rib nut set, popped out a little bit on me. Unfortunately, you gotta be careful when you get these in. Don't put too much force behind them, but guy's sitting there pretty good. We're gonna go do the next one. Install. I apologize for the poor video this time around, but this has been kind of a pain in the butt getting this all figured out. It's pretty even. I think the rib nuts make a big difference in drawing it up into the fender. A lot less concern about having it pop loose. Looks like I had that little panel come out up there. Oh, I don't think I did that. But yeah, I think rib nuts are the way to go for this.